In the Karen Reed murder trial, a federal agent and friend of John O'Keefe just told the jury that Reed kissed him a few weeks before John O'Keefe's death.
The defendant kissed me.
And how did she kiss you?
Not like a friend.
Lip to lip, is that fair to say?
Yes.
Like a romantic kiss?
That's the way I interpreted it.
The defendant. It's the only term ATF agent Brian Higgins would use to describe Karen Reed all morning, despite testifying that the two had a friendship, often socializing together through John O'Keefe. Sometimes, Higgins says he and Karen even exchanged flirtatious text messages.
And do you recall what the substance of that text was?
I think it was something like, well, to be honest with you, it was, I guess you could view it as a flirty text.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay. How is everybody? Happy Friday. Not a day where I'm normally live streaming. It's usually my day off. But we had a full day of court in the Karen Reed trial. And Brian Higgins on the stand reading a whole bunch of text messages that I thought didn't make Karen Reed look very good at all. And what I found really interesting about them is how absolutely suspicious Brian Higgins was, how he was asking questions. He was really, looked to my eye, looked like he was certain that he was being used. And he wanted to really make sure what was going on. Yeah, the kiss was not enough for him to seal the deal. And he wasn't going to rush into anything. And it looked like, I mean, the way I viewed it is that Karen Reed marked him as a mark. I mean, viewed him as a mark and was going to manipulate him, saw him easy to manipulate, easy to use, told him an untrue story about what happened in Aruba. We all know what happened in Aruba. It's that Karen Reed and John O'Keefe went on vacation with, I think there were 70 people in total. And there was John O'Keefe's friend's widow, and immediately Karen Reed says, F you. What a great introduction. What a great way to introduce yourself. F you. The woman was like, F you too. It was unreal. I said to my boyfriend, this would make me, this story should make you so happy that you're not dating someone like that, or that I'm not like that you don't have to worry about taking me on vacation and introducing me. And my first words out of my mouth would be F you. But I thought it was interesting. Clearly she was trying to use him somehow. And I don't know if it was just to use him as the next man in line, the next person in line for her. And she was already over John O'Keefe. That was pretty clear. But he wouldn't be used. And so we're going to take a look at those text messages and how they were read in court. Very embarrassing to Brian Higgins. I, of course, felt terrible for him. as anyone would. None of these witnesses asked to be witnesses in this case. And you could feel his guilt. He really liked John O'Keefe. He was friends with John O'Keefe, but he unfortunately found Karen Reed attractive. And she, I'm sure, picked up on that. And she was ready to reel him in and ready to have a guy who would do anything for her. So let's take a look at that together. And this looks like the last bit of testimony we're going to have for a while. My understanding is that they're off next week. Is that right? Off all week? Is that correct? That's what I've heard, but let me know in the comments if I've heard it correctly.
And Mr. Lally, if you're going to start, are you going to start right with messages?
Yeah, sure.
All right, folks, be mindful of the instruction I've given you on digital evidence on what you have to find before you consider them. Also, I want to tell you that what you're going to hear or see is testimony about certain statements allegedly made by the defendant. You're to view those statements solely for the limited purpose of the defendant's state of mind, as it might go to the nature of the relationship with John O'Keefe and potential motive. Okay? All right, Mr. Lally, go right ahead.
Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Presenting before you now a separate series of documents of 118 pages in length. In general, do you recognize what those are?
Yes.
What do you recognize those to be?
Text messages between the defendant and I.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth to move to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
No, not as the next exhibit. We are going to mark that 104A.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes. 103A.
That's my understanding. I think the others were marked 103. So it should be
John O'Keefe's texts were 103. So it's 104A.
So, of course, there was another really very aggressive cross of Higgins, of course, by Alan Jackson. That seems to be the only trick he has up in his sleeve, is to go, as Karen Reed says, scorched earth on every single witness. So Kitty's 1993 is asking, do you think the jury is numb to these gotcha moments now? Wisely. WTG for Lally Cross. I don't see points one for Karen Reed. The smirking was not for jury. Oh, her smirking. Yeah, that can't win over the jury. And she's shown no emotion. These juries really watch the defendants very closely. They watch their reactions. At one point, she looked, at least to my eye, like she was experiencing some shame. That was the closest I've seen to any emotion from Karen Reed when these text messages were read. Just public shame. I don't think she feels anything that she did, feels badly that she did it, just shame that it's being broadcast, which is ironic since her campaign has gone through everybody's Facebooks and text messages and broadcast them all for the world, even things that don't have anything to do with this case, and basically made the argument that every single witness in this case is terrible except for Karen Reed, and lying. And that's basically the refrain of Karen Reed supporters everywhere after every day in court. They're lying. They committed perjury. We can't wait till they're arrested. It's getting so old. I don't know how the jury is taking it. We may get, I've said it before, it's a fool's game predicting a jury. I can only tell you the way I'm seeing this trial. Obviously, I didn't see this with fresh eyes. I did read I watched the hearings and I read some of the filings. So I was more educated about the evidence in this case and came to an opinion. So I'm not the ideal person, but if this campaign works, if the jury is shirking their duties and checking out social media, and that may come into this, we may get a very weird verdict. Also, they haven't, I think I'm very interested in how Lally is going, the instructions for the jury, and how this is a second degree murder charge. I understand why it is, in my opinion of it, why it's second degree murder charge, because of her visit to the scene. She seemed to, and from what I understand, that her car has cameras that beep when you're about to hit something, so she couldn't know she didn't hit something. And the fact that she knew right where he was, I thought Jennifer McCabe was incredible on the stand. Ditto Carrie Roberts, wasn't even cross-examined. They learned their lesson from cross-examining Jennifer McCabe. They weren't going to try that again. So I think it's enough? Does any of these things prove that Karen Reed didn't do it? Or that someone else did it? I don't think so, but let me know if you think that they've scored a lot of points today in this cross. Even if they totally throw out his testimony, there's still so much more. There's still so much more against Karen Reed.
And jurors, you'll have both Exhibit 104 with you that was a little bit difficult to read. What we've taken all this time for as counsel was great to work out a form that is much clearer for you to be able to read, and that will be attached or right with Exhibit 104. Okay.
So much.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Higgins, first, Your Honor, may I request permission to publish the jury on screen?
Yes.
Starting with page number 1, Ms. Gilman. Now, Mr. Higgins, what's up on the screen, is that what you have before you as Exhibit 104A?
Yes.
And as you just mentioned, these are text messages between yourself and Ms. Reed, is that correct?
Yes.
And on what date did you first receive any communication from Ms. Reed?
January 12th, 2022.
And prior to that, had you had her number or did she have your number as far as you were aware?
No.
You had never communicated to her via cell phone or any other means prior to January 12th, 2022?
No, I had not.
So initially you received a text on that date from an unknown number, is that correct?
Yes.
And from the text before you and what's up on the screen, as far as there are gray bubbles on the left, blue bubbles on the right, which is you and which is Ms. Reed?
The blue bubbles would belong to myself.
So the other bubbles would be Ms. Reed, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And so that initial communication you received on January 12th, 2022, that's about 8:27 p.m., is that correct?
Yes.
And what was the content of the message that you received?
You want me to read it?
Yes, please.
Hey, Brian, it's Weed Whacker.
And how did you respond to that?
Question mark.
And if it's helpful to you, sir, if you can't see the screen sort of from where you are, you can read along in the exhibit before you.
Okay.
Now, as far as that communication is concerned, is the Weed Whacker, what, if any, meaning did that have to you? Or
So ultimately, it was based off a interaction with the defendant, kind of a nickname that she adopted.
And how did that nickname sort of come to be, or what, if anything, transpired between the two of you that led to that?
So I was leaving, I believe, my residence one.
So listen to this. She has the nickname Weed Whacker. And listen to the story. Even if you had this experience with Brian Higgins, you really want to call yourself Weed Whacker? I thought that was bizarre. But check out this story. It's so Karen Reed.
One day in Canton, traveling down Pleasant Street, I saw the defendant along the side of the house on the Pleasant Street side using a weed whacker. And I gave kind of a beep of the horn, and the defendant gave me the finger. So I realized that she clearly must not have recognized me possibly because of what I was driving. I was in my work vehicle. So I spun the vehicle around, and as I pulled up to roll down the window, she said something to the effect, "Get the fuck away from me. My husband's a Boston cop." And then I rolled down the window more, and she clearly recognized me, who I was in that vehicle.
And did that become sort of a recurring theme in subsequent conversations that you had with Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Now, sir, if I could direct your attention to page 6 within that exhibit before you.
They're not numbered, right, Mr. Lally?
I'm sorry?
They're not numbered. Is your copy numbered?
No, Your Honor. Not that I can see.
They're not. So be cognizant of that when you ask questions.
You know, I believe they are. That's why I hesitated. It's sort of in the middle of the page, facing sideways.
Oh, my apologies. I have it now. Very small.
So just on this page, directing your attention to the bottom, it sort of goes on to the next date of January 13th. Is that correct?
Yes.
And if I could direct your attention to page 7 of those text messages. And Ms. Gilman, if I could have page 7 on the screen. And sir, if you could read from page 7, and if you could just indicate who's speaking and what is being said in this communication.
So again, I'm in the blue bubbles. Did you try those Smirnoff screwdrivers? I stopped at the Hilly for one last night. I said, "Ha, how did you get my digits?" Defendant responded, "The Melissa and Lido show." I said, "Ha, I thought you creeped John's phone." I said, "Ha, again." Defendant responded, "No way. I was the last person in Greater Canton who didn't have your number. I think even Kerry has it." I responded, "What?" with a bunch of question marks. I said, "I just don't give my personal number out to anyone. How would Kerry have my number?" with a bunch of question mark. And the defendant responded, "Melissa had it."
As far as in those communications, the reference the defendant makes to the Melissa and Lido show, do you know what that means?
The two individuals that I also know from the hillside.
And the Kerry person that she refers to, do you know who that is?
I believe that's Kerry Curran, Chris Curran's wife.
Now, if I could direct your attention to page 9. And Ms. Gilman, if I could have page 9. And again, sir, if you could read from page 9 as far as that conversation goes and just indicates whom is speaking at different points.
Okay, so the defendant said, I'd prefer a weed whacker. I responded, that's the thing about nicknames. Defendant said, we were tossing around the idea of a short vacay with the current show, wanted to see if you were game. I responded, you don't have a say. And I believe I was referring to nicknames. And I said, vacation where? Defendant responded, I know. They need to happen organically. I'm the queen of nicknames. Was just going to rent a beach house in, I believe it was supposed to say Fort Lauderdale. It's abbreviated. Something quick and easy. I said, Defendant responded, I'm the queen of vacays too. Always a good time. I responded, I'm going.
Do you hear that, guys? She's the queen of vacays. And there's a really interesting part in this whole exchange where she says, John O'Keefe and I, we don't like to hang out with other couples, which I thought was really bizarre to say. Because he's saying, I don't want to get in the middle of, be a third wheel. I don't want to get in the middle of your relationship with O'Keefe. So now she's representing their relationship like John and I both just don't like to hang out with other couples. We're always looking for single people to hang out with. It's not that I want to I want to solidify some kind of affair or relationship so I can move on to you next right away, have you all lined up and under my thumb. That seems like control is a really important thing for her, that she have total control over whoever's she's dating, and they kind of worship her and will do anything for her. And Brian Higgins is not having it. Was on to her right away. I thought it was fascinating. Heisenberg says, thank you. Here is something that really took away any points from her side. Higgins dealt with his previous phone after the order had been denied. Karen is desperate. Yeah. So after it was okay to get rid of his phone, he traded in his phone. Is that correct? Still guilty? Or am I thinking of Brian Albert? I mean, they've just been grasping at straws and trying to make every witness look like they're up to something nefarious. And when they talk, it's not that they're talking because they're working through a traumatic situation. It's that they're plotting together, or they're getting their stories straight. And it was really interesting on Wednesday when we looked at Alan Jackson's cross of Jen McCabe, the language that he used. And that's what lawyers do. They're wordsmiths. They really, he chooses his words very carefully, and they often have just slightly different meanings, and it spins the story just a little bit. And you see this in innocence fraud all the time, so that there's it's $1 billion movement trying to get any kind of juveniles, meaning teenagers. And those are usually, if a teenager got life without parole. So there's $1 billion movement trying to totally get rid of any kind of sentencing for teenagers of life without parole. And if you get life without a parole, and as a teenager, it means you've done something so egregious, meaning your age is such a mitigating factor. Anyway, one of the phrases they use for those teenagers who have been convicted and sentenced to life without parole is justice-involved youth. It's just like, I was walking by the courthouse and I decided to get involved. I just decided somehow to get involved with the justice system, to volunteer myself, to generously volunteer my time with the justice system. So it's scary. You know, I every time one of these witnesses gets up on the stand, and I know they're going to have to deal with a cross from either Yannetti or Jackson. Elizabeth Little, I don't worry so much about, but I worry that their words are going to get manipulated. The meaning of their actions are going to be misrepresented. And that's pretty much what has happened with every witness.
Going to Nashville next month, 19 to 21st, for a benefit. One of our guys got shot in the head. You guys should come.
And as far as either one of those trips that you were discussing, do you recall any further discussion or any going on any of those trips?
Well, I mean, I definitely went to Nashville for that benefit for one of my coworkers. There may have been more conversation about the Florida trip, but I can't specifically recall it.
Now, sir, if I could direct your attention to page 16, and Ms. Gilman, if I could have that. And this is on that same date of January 13th, is that correct?
I believe so. The date's not at the top here, but I believe it is.
And again, sir, if you could read from that page of communication as far as who was speaking and what was said.
So there's a photograph of somebody with a weed whacker. The defendant said, "No, you're not a creep." I said, "Nope." She said, "You're kind of a loner," which I used to be. I responded, "No, not really. I have a ton of buddies, but I only let a handful of friends in that I'm tight with. So you think you got me figured out?" And then I typed "circle of trust" in quotes.
So Karen keeps saying, we're alike. You're just like me. You know, it's almost like it's really love bombing. What anytime you get involved in any kind of coercive control relationship, which is what I think John O'Keefe was involved in, is a relationship where Karen Reed used coercive control and isolated him from his friends. So what I got from saying to that woman, F you right away, is already she's creating rifts and creating divisions. And it's a way to get John O'Keefe all to herself. And that was never possible because he was absolutely dedicated to his niece and nephew. And she also resented them. She wanted John O'Keefe all to herself, all to control. And here you can see she's already starting to love bomb Brian Higgins. We're alike. I get you. We share secrets. We share interests. And she tells him how wildly attractive she finds them, which I find hard to believe. Certainly not a dumb guy and a very likable guy, but I don't know. Is he the pinup of the year? No, I think he would admit that. Not to talk about anyone's looks or disparage anyone's looks. It's just let's talk about this case honestly. And here's Karen Reed throwing herself at this guy way before her relationship with John O'Keefe is over, and when John O'Keefe is trying to get out of it, telling her to, we know he was telling her to leave the house, that they fought all the time, according to the niece and nephew. Unfortunately, we're not going to hear that testimony. There's a total media blackout on that testimony because they're minors. Hopefully, I've misunderstood that, and maybe it's just a media blackout on I'm still holding out hope. It's a media blackout just on their image, I'm hoping, but I I would doubt that. Or from what I've read it's a total media blackout, but I'm still holding out hope that maybe I'm wrong and it's just that they're not going to film them.
And sir, if I could direct your attention to the next page, number 17. And it's coming if I could have that. And again, sir, if you could read from page 17 as far as what is said and who is talking.
So the defendant said, yeah, I said loner, not loser. I assume you know a lot of people, PPL, people abbreviated. You never really can figure anyone out completely. Your dad died when you were young. And I responded, he died in March of 2020. I'm so not a loser. You won't figure me out. LOL. Defendant responded, no one is a loser. I just didn't mean loner to imply friendless. I'm sorry.
See, no one is a loser except anyone with damaging testimony against me. Then I want my lawyer to go scorched earth and destroy and the blogger and my team of supporters to destroy their life if they have damaging testimony or if they just don't believe in my concocted stories that change like the weather. I just think this text message exchange is so telling. It's so Karen Reed. She's repositioning every time, and he calls her out, and then she again repositions and again manipulates from a different angle. Heisenberg says Karen's side is still trying to create a narrative that doesn't exist. Today proved it big time. Thanks, Heisenberg. And they'll keep at it, and they'll keep telling us that we're crazy. And even if she gets acquitted, it's not going to change my opinion of what I've viewed so far in court, which is one damaging piece of evidence and damaging testimony after the next. And I'm not convinced that this was done because Karen Reed was so inebriated and didn't know what she was doing or did it by accident. She seems like she's an experienced drinker, that she knew what she was doing. She did it out of anger. She had all the time in the world to alert anyone to get him help and didn't. And then went back and brought her friends to put on a performance of madness and hysteria alternatively. And neither were convincing, it seems, to the people around her. I mean, asking if the red, let me put this, the red liquid on her face was from her period and not from her fake attempts at CPR with John, because we heard from the first responders that nothing was done correctly, that his throat was completely backed up with material. So it just seems like it was a performance, and she thought that would be enough to get away with it, and enough to never have to take responsibility for what she did. And even now, we talk about that Nightline interview. So at first she says John O'Keefe was the patron saint of Canton. And then she says he was frugal. So I'm going to talk to the women in the audience here. What women in the audience, talking to you guys, don't you all dream about having a frugal boyfriend or a frugal husband. Wasn't that always your childhood and teenage dream and dream even to this day? Isn't that top on your list of desired? I want a guy who's going to be so frugal that he's going to spend no money on me. Forget flowers on Valentine's Day. I have a frugal boyfriend.
I'm sorry that's recent. It wasn't COVID, was it? I responded, cancer. Defendant responded, I know you date girls who don't lock the house behind them and you are private and observant. I'm sorry, what kind? I responded, lung, brain, kidney, and pelvis. How do you know all these things? LOL.
If I could turn your attention to the next page, page 18. And again, sir, if you could read from that.
In the blue bubbles is me. I said, you're funny. Defendant responded, yikes. Wow, that's rough. Jesus, I'm sorry. We chat a lot at the hillside. I responded, don't be sorry. Life is hard sometimes. I always figure it out. Then I said, who chats? ? Defendant responded, life is hard, but losing people is the hardest. So I'm sorry. We chat. I responded, that's all you got? We chat.
Losing people is hard, especially when I'm the cause of that loss. Then it's not hard at all for me. Then it seems like I mean, the feeling I get is that she feels that she won. If she couldn't have John O'Keefe, no one could. And it's a classic breakup violence that we see in this case. And when I look at her at the defense table, her steely look, it doesn't scream regret, doesn't scream remorse. She's only sorry that she got caught and she has to go through this trial. Because the whole plan of this defense was, this is what Yanetti's famous for, is getting cases thrown out before they ever go to trial. And I think I'm going to probably review that again, but go to David Yanetti's website and he has all the cases, and it's amazing the amount of cases dismissed of his 2023 cases. But didn't work here. And of course, there was a rumor going around that she was trying to work out some kind of deal with the Commonwealth. And I found that hard to buy because Lally, I know he gets criticized. I think he's doing a fantastic job. I thought his opening statement was a little too long, but I don't know of a case that was won on the opening statement. Any case that is won on the opening statement. It's just a kind of roadmap of what the jury's going to see and where we're going, and meaning as a prosecutor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just putting myself in the position of one to explain what I mean by opening statements or a roadmap. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm going to prove. And I think he showed masterful ability to not only prove his case, but totally gut the defense case as he's proving his own case. And in a quiet, understated, just the facts kind of way. It's not flashy. It's not made for TV or YouTube. But boy, do I find it effective. Whereas Jackson is very much made for the cameras, and I'm finding him really a turnoff. Every witness cannot be treated as public enemy number one. I can't see how the jury is going to love that. I just can't. You're basically saying everybody involved in this case is horrible, and not only horrible, they're guilty of doing the worst thing and covering it up while having no alternative story. It's bizarre. There's the ambulance going to rescue the defense right now.
Sure, you're from Brockton, spit it out. Defendant responded, you and I chatted about the girl who kept forgetting to lock the door. I said, oh, she has been out of play like for 3 months now. And then I believe it starts to say out of rotation, question mark.
And then, sir, if I could direct your attention to page 20. And again, sir, if you could read from that.
I'm in the blue bubbles again. I said, I just got a Saturday invite. The defendant said, did you say yes, question mark. I said, not yet, with a bunch of periods, but did respond. Defendant said, what did you say, Mr. Elusive? I responded, no, I just don't want to intrude on your couple's night. Ha ha, I'm shy. The defendant responded, we prefer to hang out with non-couples. Bob Gallery is probably coming too, solo. We'll probably do cards or something at some point. I'm inviting you. And I said, ha ha.
Now, sir, is that the Saturday night that's being referenced there? Is that the same night that you had gone over to the home at some point for the Patriots game?
Yes.
And if I could direct your attention to the next page, page 21.
Yes.
And again, if you could read from that page. The
defendant said, John said Brian's being wishy-washy now, in quotes. I responded, haha, did you tell him you texted me? The defendant responded, no. And then I gave a thumbs up. Then I said, you cranky now, question mark. Defendant said, haha, no, just stop being so anti-couples. Most couples don't even like each other. I said, name a few. Defendant.
See, look, we don't like to hang out with couples. You're not going to be the only single person there. It's not that I'm inviting you over to prey on you. I mean, there's going to be another guy who I have zero interest in there also. And most couples don't even like each other. See? Just like John O'Keefe and I don't like each other anymore. That's just normal, the way most couples don't even I mean, what a worldview. But no one can accuse her of being a sentimental or romantic, right? At least from this text message. I don't, most couples don't even like each other. God. Crazy.
Said, name a few. I don't know. All of them. Question mark. They all want to hang out with single people. And then I said,
Thank you. Sir, if I could direct your attention to page 26.
Yeah, see, but when you're older, when you're Karen Reed's age or older, there's very few single people to hang out. Most people have gotten married or have serious girlfriends or boyfriends. There aren't a lot of single people around to hang out with. And it's absolutely fun to hang out with other couples. At least that's my experience, but I find these text messages so bizarre, so odd. Dean Walker, nice to see you. Thanks for the super sticker. Heisenberg says, Kate is going to have a good show tonight. Definitely tune in. Oh, I didn't know that. All right. Thanks for letting me know. Be curious to hear her take.
And sir, if I could ask you to read from that page.
In blue is going to be myself again. Foul ball. Defendant responded, "You stink." I said, "You suck and you're double trouble." Defendant responded, "You're hot." I responded, "Are you serious or messing with me?" Defendant responded, "No, I'm serious." I responded, "Failing is mutual. Is that bad?"
See, he says he knows she's trouble. He knows he has her number, and he knows that she's messing with him, manipulating him, and finds it very weird when he has a lot of questions for Karen Reed, who doesn't want to answer any of them. And when she gets backed into a corner, she just flatters him and tells him how hot he is. And he's like, are you messing with me? Or come on now. Come on. Are you serious? So when I heard about, we heard about this kiss and we heard about this flirtation, and from both sides, from both the defense and the Commonwealth, in the hearings before this, or at least the filings before this. And these were not the text messages at all I was expecting. I was expecting a guy falling for Karen Reed hook, line, and sinker. So I still have guys coming into my comment section saying, "Oh, she's so gorgeous. Oh, she's so attractive. There's something so sexy about her," even knowing what she did. So it's interesting. She's definitely willing to use that, willing to use flattery, willing to use manipulation, willing to use psychology, we're alike. And this guy is clearly embarrassed about having these text messages read, but he was on guard. On guard.
"How long have you thought that?" Defendant responded, "Are you okay driving? You don't want to stay here." I responded back, "I'm fine. I have an office at the PD. You didn't answer the question." And then it starts to say, defendant said, "Rather you stay here."
And is that, to your memory, when is that text exchange taking place? In reference to the night that you went over to the O'Keefe's house.
I believe it was that night.
Now, at Mr. O'Keefe's house on that particular evening, do you recall how you came into the house?
I believe it might have been the front door.
And if you know about how long were you at Mr. O'Keefe's house that night?
I was probably one of the last people to leave, I think.
And what, if anything, happened as you were exiting from Mr. O'Keefe's house that night?
So as I was exiting the house, it was either through the breezeway or the garage. And as we were walking out, the defendant planted a kiss on me.
Now, before you went out that way, where was Mr. O'Keefe? Did you say goodbye to him or anything like that?
I think I said goodbye to him. He might have been in the bathroom. I'm not 100% positive where he was.
And when you went to leave, which exit from the house were you headed to initially?
Well, as I said, I don't remember exactly if it was the breezeway or the garage I was starting to walk through, but whichever way I started to exit, the defendant told me to go a different way.
And which way did the defendant tell you to go?
Well, her way. I honestly can't tell you which door that was. If it was either the breezeway or the garage.
And as you were going out, again, I'm sorry, what happened?
The defendant kissed me.
And how did she kiss you?
not like a friend.
Lip to lip, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And look at the way he says it. It seems like he must think about this kiss and just wish he could just go back, get a time machine and never go over there. It's like he's talking about an affront to his very being, knowing what he knows about who she is and what she did. It disgusts him. And he has clearly thought about it and thought she wanted me to walk this way. And now my understanding is she wanted to kiss him, not in view of John O'Keefe's cameras. That's why she was telling him to walk this way and not that way. But this guy works for the ATF, has been around people, knows people, and is just is angry that he was used. It's not cringe. It's like disgust. That's what I get from him. Absolute disgust that this whole episode happened, mixed in with a little shame and embarrassment. This was a weak moment. You have a woman like Karen Reed, and whatever you can say about Karen Reed, she's no shrinking violet, throwing herself at you and saying, oh no, it's over between John O'Keefe and myself. I'm just into you, and I have feelings, and I have feelings of compassion. Oh, that's so hard, and listening, and oh, I understand life is hard and we're just alike, mirroring him. It's a masterclass, these text messages and manipulation. And I was just super impressed with Brian Higgins' smarts. And also, as you know, men, usually when women throw themselves at them, will not hold themselves back and evaluate the situation and ask questions. And so it's unusual that he asked so many questions and that it didn't go further than a kiss. That was also in the discussion before this trial. How far did this thing go? Was this a full-blown affair? Clearly not. But and I love that he calls her the defendant, the criminal, the accused criminal, sitting there in between her defense lawyers, planted a kiss on me.
Like a romantic kiss.
That's the way I interpreted it.
And were you still inside the house at the time that this occurred, or were you outside the house, if you know?
Not sure if we had just got to the outside or not. It might have. I'm not sure if it was close proximity to leaving.
And what was your reaction to that?
I was taken back.
Was that something that you were expecting?
No.
And about how long was it between when the defendant kissed you and when you left?
Oh, almost immediately.
Now, sir, if I could turn your attention back to the exhibit before you on page number 27.
Yes.
Again, sir, if you could read from that page and who's speaking.
So I'm in the blue bubbles, and I said, I think you're messing with me. The defendant said, why do you think that? I responded, because this is so out of left.
Why do you think that? No, I'm not messing with you. My feelings are genuine. That would be the first thing you would say. Not, why do you think that? So she's trying to get more information so she can manipulate him some more. And this guy, on to her. Brian Higgins missed his calling maybe as a psychologist. He got her number right away. Or not totally right away. but pretty close to right away. Art Race says, Roberta, will you be going to CrimeCon? I've never been to CrimeCon. I know nothing about it. I don't even know where it is. So I wasn't planning on it. Should I be going to CrimeCon? Is there something exciting going on there?
Left field. Where did these feelings come from? Defendant responded, I just think you're like me. I said, meaning? Question mark. Defendant said, do you have your own kids? I said, I have no kids. How am I like you? Question mark. Hello. And defendant responded, aren't we alike? I responded, I think so. So why did you get my number and reach out to me? And I think the defendant put a question mark on that bubble, I believe. Or I might have, I don't know.
Now, that conversation as far as you asking her about why she reached out to you, how often was that question asked by you through the course of these text communications?
Well, the extent of the actual communication via text between the defendant and I was between January 12th and January 29th when John passed. On the 28th and 29th, the 28th, I sent a text, as we spoke about before when we were at the waterfall. That text didn't respond. There was a text sent by the defendant to me the next day. So in that time period between the 12th and the 29th, there was 9 days that the defendant and I exchanged text messages. With that being said, those text messages, I don't believe, were every day, consecutive days. There was 9 days in between the 12th and the 29th.
And so as far as that questioning, as far as posing to her, why did she reach out to you? Was that something that you asked once or more than once?
Yeah, I asked it more than once. And during the pendency of this communication, I was basically trying to suss out what the intentions were of the defendant. Was the defendant interested in me? Was she at the end of her relationship with John? Was she trying to weaponize me against John and put me in the middle? There was numerous things that were going on. And that's what I was trying to vet out or suss out or whatever you want to call it. But I was having a hard time accepting what was happening.
Yeah, and rightfully so. You got her number, Brian Higgins. Nice job. Nice job. She was, and I would say she was doing all of those things, weaponizing him. She was very angry at John O'Keefe. Very good job, Brian Higgins. Was she angry at John O'Keefe for telling her to get out of the house, for trying to get away from calling her toxic and saying this has got to end? And was she lining up her next victim? Because if you think that she was going to have a healthy relationship, you know, should things hadn't gone the way they went, meaning had she not done what she did, ended John O'Keefe's life, and she moved on to Brian Higgins, if you think that she would have had a healthy relationship with Brian Higgins.
Well, think again.
Yeah, exactly, Joan.
Sir, if I could direct you to the next page, page 28. And again, sir, if you could read from that page.
So I'm in the blue bubbles. Shoot straight with me. Defendant responded, I told you, I just think we're alike, right? Couple question marks. I responded, yes, agree. Now what? Defendant responded, I don't know. I said, shouldn't you know? Defendant responded, do you like me? I said, yes, from jump. Defendant said, when was jump? I said, first time I saw you. Defendant responded, when was that? I said, Hillside for your shore.
If I could direct your attention to the next page, 29. If I could ask you to read from that, sir.
So again, I'm in the blue bubbles. Hillside for sure. When were you interested? Defendant responded, I don't know, you're just my type. I responded, you think you can handle me? I thought you were happy, ? Defendant responded, how do you know if I'm happy? I said, I just assumed. Defendant responded, are you hard to handle? I may have put a ? Then I said, what do you like about me? Defendant responded, I just feel like you're from my neighborhood. I said, yes, yeah, ditto. Defendant responded, and I think you're hot.
Right. Again, using sex as a weapon. And I think you're hot, and I'm willing to go much further really quickly. So stop thinking with your brain and start thinking right with the id side of yourself, right? She's trying to get him into a non-thinking sexualized state. So he doesn't question her. And once that happens, it's much harder to, once it would be much harder to get away from her because he'd already had betrayed John O'Keefe, and he would have had to, and he would have probably had ruined a friendship. This is if she did not cause the if she had nothing to do with the death of John O'Keefe, let's just say as a thought experiment, and this all went per her plan, he would have had guilt over betraying his friend John O'Keefe, and he would have had to make that worth it by totally committing to Karen. And she knows all these things. You're from my neighborhood. All I can think about is all the people that live in my neighborhood in Manhattan. Yeah, you guys are all from my neighborhood. We're all alike, We're all from the same neighborhood. I mean, what does that even mean? I just feel like you're from my neighborhood. Not like we have the same emotional makeup or we have the same interests. You're just like from my neighborhood. You live close to some landmarks, just like I do. She's so bizarre. And I really think what would be called an antisocial personality or a psychopath. And nothing about the way she's handled herself in interviews or in court, or the way she spearheaded this absolute campaign of terror against John O'Keefe's family and the witnesses in this case have dissuaded me, only affirmed my opinion that she is seriously a dangerous individual, an individual without conscience, someone to be avoided, and she needs to be separated from the rest of society before she does any more damage. And there's been rumors about her past acts of violence going around, but nobody's ever been able to come with the receipts. But boy, there are some scary stories bantering around. Doesn't mean they're true, but they seem consistent with the person that she presents publicly. She looked for the most aggressive, morally bankrupt lawyers to represent her and who would join in on this campaign, in my opinion. This is not just, and I can hear the Karen Reed people going, you're just angry because she's been given a vigorous defense. There is nothing in having a vigorous defense that says you need to spearhead a campaign of terror and re-victimize the victim's family and hunt down and harass witnesses. In fact, that goes against the code and conduct of lawyers, but they never seem to get into any trouble, these defense lawyers. They seem to act any way they want, and the only time they ever seem to get into any trouble if it's some kind of financial theft. But they can say all the untruths that they want. They can spearhead a campaign and untruths about the case before they ever go to trial. Talk about the case all they want. Feed our lazy journalists and our ideologically aligned journalists all the untruths they want. And I'm ready. I think I might spontaneously explode the next time I hear another YouTuber say, "Oh, we've never seen anything like this." Excuse me, Stephen Avery, Adnan Syed, Amanda Knox, Ryan Ferguson, just to name a few. These innocence fraud campaigns are nothing new. The only thing different about this is that it's being done in real time in America. Amanda Knox's campaign was done in real time, but she was being tried in Italy. So we had the language barrier and some distance. But shame on every journalist who just took Karen Reed's word for it and wrote her fictional version of what happened to John O'Keefe that night. Shame on you. And without ever, and I'm sure they never, even Gretchen Voss, did you ever get in touch with the Commonwealth and try to get their side? I mean, that article seems like it's written totally from Karen Reed's point of view. It's disturbing. And you see that time and time again. I mean, you don't even see like a little footnote, the Commonwealth or the DA or the state or the prosecutor was not available for comment or didn't return calls. They just don't bother. They have the defense side and they'll run with it. Erin Moriarty is the queen of that too. They love to go to her with these campaigns. She's done more of these specials for accused and convicted killers than a lot of other journalists. But there's a whole host of journalists that will happily do the bidding of convicted and accused killers.
And if I could direct your attention to the next page, page 30. If I could ask you to read from that, sir.
I'm in the blue bubbles again. You really think that? I have always thought that about you. Defendant responded, what? I responded that you're hot, smart, witty, but I didn't think you were interested. Defendant responded, witty? I responded, yeah, meaning quick with a response. Tell me why you got my number and reached out to me. Defendant responded, just thought we were the same / from the same neighborhood. I responded, are you afraid to say what's on your mind? What's in your mind? And then I said, on. Defendant responded, no, didn't I? No, didn't I? Question mark.
And sir, if I could turn your attention, to the next.
That's interesting. Are you afraid to say what's in your mind? It's just a slight difference. On your mind, meaning, are you afraid to betray how dark it is inside your head? He's very suspicious of her. And what makes me very, very upset is when I was covering the Dan Markel case, all the other YouTubers who would say, justice for Dan Markel, hashtag justice for Dan Markel. And now they're covering the Karen Reed case where the accused is actively re-victimizing the victim's family. And they're saying nothing. They're so scared of losing money, they won't even say she's guilty. They won't say peep about this campaign and how immoral and wrong it is. Shame on you. So don't tell me about how you care about victims and victims' families, because your actions say something else.
Page 31, and ask you to read from that.
I'm glad I'm in the blue bubble again. I'm glad I stopped by. I should have come earlier. Do you really live in Mansfield? Defendant responded, yeah. I was basically begging you. I responded, you don't have to beg me. I meant to say beg. Defendant responded, huh? I said, I will give you what you want. How are you texting right now? Then I said, leaving me hanging. Defendant responded, no. I typed kids and then kinda. Defendant responded, how am I texting? And I began to say, is everyone asleep?
As far as the
Yeah, he's saying, how are you doing this? How are you doing this in front of everybody? How are you openly flirting via text in front of everyone? Are there kids around? And notice how she doesn't want to give anything away, and he picks up on it again, leaving me hanging. No. What does no mean? No that that she's not texting him right now? No that she's not leaving him hanging? And he says, I will give you whatever you want. Boy, I bet his stomach turns reading that now. How am I texting? Is everyone asleep? How are you getting away with being a duplicitous so-and-so? You know, that's what he's saying, basically.
communication from the defendant indicating, yeah, I was basically begging you. What did you take that to mean?
That she wanted me to come over?
And if I could turn your attention to the next page, 32. If I could ask you to read from that page as well.
So it starts off with the defendant saying, I just wide awake on my phone. Yes, they are. I said, I should have stayed.
She's just wide awake. I think this is a good time to take just a quickie break before we get back and listen to more of Karen Reed's bizarre, manipulative, chilling text messages and Brian Higgins' fascinating testimony. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. If you are enjoying this episode of my True Crime Report, please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share this episode. Get access to exclusive podcasts and other bonus content by becoming a patron today. If you have a question or comment for me, shoot me a super chat and I'll do my best to answer it and read it on air. Thanks so much. Now back to the show. Okay, back to Karen Reed's bizarre, flirtatious text messages with Brian Higgins, the ATF agent. And he's suspicious. He wants to know exactly the circumstances of her texting, where she is, where everyone else is in the house. And of course, we know she planted a kiss on him after directing him away from the cameras in the house. Boy, he dodged a bullet. Boy, isn't this the definition of dodging a bullet?
Stayed LOL. So now what? Question mark. Defendant said, yes, you should have. I responded, that would have been distracting.
Wait a second. I want to go back. I just go back just a few seconds because we're losing context here.
Wide awake on my phone. Yes, they are. I said, I should have stayed LOL. So now what? Question mark. Defendant said, yes, you should have. I responded, that would have been distracting. So now what? So no, what? And then I said, now. Defendant said, now what? Question mark. I responded, balls in your court. Defendant said, what do you want? I responded, loaded court.
See, right. That's exactly the way Keith Renee worked, who was the leader of NXIVM. He's now doing 120 years. They find out what you want, what makes you tick, and they figure out your psychology, and they use it to manipulate and really bleed you dry. And that's what I believe Karen Reed's doing here. And I think it's really interesting that he says, so know what? Because he's really trying to figure her out and know more. Not now what? So know what? What do I know about this woman? Not much. Yeah, because his inner alarm is going crazy and saying stop. And he says balls in your court, which is kind of an interesting, maybe a double entendre there. She's got him by the balls. And that's what I'm thinking about. And instead of answering questions, she's asking questions. So she doesn't really want to give up too much. Control is key here, and figuring out what his limits are and where are his vulnerabilities. That's what she's doing here. Absolute psychopath, scary, bone chilling. And I only wish that John O'Keefe could have gotten away. He was trying to when she put an end to him. I wish he could have successfully gotten away from her. But I think that this is an interesting case in that the Free Karen Reed people are constantly trying to present it like that there's it's an overwhelming case of innocence when there's zero evidence that points to her non-involvement, from the cracked taillight to her own words to how many people and how many great witnesses too heard her say, I hit him, this is my fault. The fact that she knew where he was. Jen McCabe was a great witness. Carrie Roberts, same thing. Her own father, her own interviews, the forensics. We're going to hear about the glass that was found, that he was carrying, was found where he was found in the snow. So if you're going to beat someone up and throw them out, why would you throw a cocktail glass that we know he had in the car with him out there? That doesn't make any sense. And why would all these people decide to start a kind of a fight club life of crime and do it so poorly, considering their profession? I get the blue wall of silence defense, but wouldn't you think they would be better criminals if that's the case?
Question, what do you want? Question mark. Defendant responded, I asked you, exclamation point. I in turn said, nope, you initiated this.
If I could turn your attention to the next page, 33. If I could ask you to read from that, sir.
I said, spit it out. I'm in the blue bubbles. Defendant said, hey, we're single and we don't have kids. We can do whatever we want. I responded, don't you have a boyfriend? Question mark. Defendant responded, where are you? Question mark. I said, Canton.
See, she says, we're single and we can do whatever we want. See, I'm just like you. I'm single and we can do whatever we want. So she's trying to say, I didn't make a vow in front of God and everyone to be faithful to John O'Keefe. But Brian Higgins has a working more compass and said, wait, but you do have a boyfriend and you did make a commitment to him to be monogamous. So what are you talking about? And right here, she's going to change the subject. Where are you? And he takes the bait. Unfortunately, he should have kept hammering her on that. Canton, where? I mean, she doesn't care where he is.
Defendant said, where? Question mark. I responded, my office is at the PD. Why? Are you going to Mansfield? Question mark. Defendant responded, where is that? I said, Canton PD. Defendant said, I have a house there from before I reconnected W. John. I responded, oh, I feel like you're not really saying what's on your mind.
If I could turn your attention to the next page, 34, and ask you to read from that, sir.
Defendant starts off and says, do you like me? Question mark. I responded, yes, clearly. Defendant said, come over my house. I responded, when? Question mark. Defendant said,
wow. So she's saying, see, forget that I have no morals and I'm willing to cheat on my boyfriend. Come over right now. Almost like a striptease. I'm ready right now. I'm ready to give myself to you totally. And most men would, all I hear in my brain is like the car, like most men would have been over there so fast. And he just keeps saying, I think you're messing with me. He's too cautious. And thank heavens for being cautious. Because had this gone further, boy, Alan Jackson would have had, he tried to have a field day anyway in cross-examination with this. But it didn't get too far because he was really, really suspicious of her. He understands that she could be a very dangerous person, and he clocked her correctly. It's a very dangerous person.
when works for you? I said, whoever, and then whenever, when works for you, question mark. The defendant said, I asked you first. I responded, I think you're messing with me. Defendant said, I'm glad you.
Again, I think you're messing with me. Again, she doesn't deny it. So lying is stressful. People will do anything to avoid it. So does anybody remember the interview she gave on the courthouse steps where she was asked if she did it? And instead of saying, no, I didn't do it, she said, I think we all know who did it. And Alan Jackson has to jump in and say, no, my client didn't do it. No, she didn't. No, she didn't. And good on whoever that reporter is. Said she admitted it like 4 times. No, she didn't. She asked a question. That's very different. And then Alan Jackson's like, nope, this press conference is over. Didn't go as planned. First of all, my client can't deny that she did it. Has a little trouble. Secondly, somehow she's absolutely sure who did. And you can see where they can't even develop a third party. They haven't had they can't tell an alternative story from beginning to end that makes any sense at all. It changes all the time. All they can do is bring up kind of why come arguments. You know, why come Jen McCabe texted House Long to die in the cold at 2:27 a.m. when she didn't. That's when her browser was open. Ian Whiffen, the Cellbrite expert, is going to testify that the browser was open at 2:27. And when that search was done, it was done at Karen Reed's bequest at 6:23 and 6:24. Why come they didn't find John O'Keefe's shoe? Why come nobody didn't see John O'Keefe that? It's just like stupid questions. Like it should have gone this way. Why didn't it go this way? It does. None of those questions absolve Karen Reed of being responsible for this. For the death of, for the really the murder of John O'Keefe. Let's not call it the death, the murder of John O'Keefe. That's what it was. But I'm very interested to hear the instructions to the jury regarding the second-degree murder charge. And also, there's also the hair, John O'Keefe's hair on her bumper. There's also the tail light, microscopic pieces or small pieces of tail light. I don't know if they're I've heard them described as microscopic in his clothing. And I know the defense has made a big deal that his clothing was on the floor at some point, but still wasn't poorly treated enough, his clothing, to not have the Commonwealth or the forensic specialists find small pieces of Karen Reed's taillight in his shirt. And there's her taillight broken at 8:26 or 8:27. Help me out. Around then in the morning in that area. Excuse me for not remembering exactly when, but there it is when the officer went to do a welfare check on John O'Keefe's kids, his niece and nephew. There's Karen Reed's broken taillight, clear as day. So it's a really hard defendant to defend if you're a defense attorney. But I don't even think they've done any kind of job in poking any kind of holes in the Commonwealth's case.
You came over tonight with some type of face. I responded, me too, ball's in your court. What do you want, Karen? You looked great tonight.
If I could direct your attention to the next page, 35, and the last or second to last blue bubble down the bottom, starting with "Are you glad?" Do you see that?
Page 35?
Yes.
And where is it again?
Second to last blue bubble, starting with "Are you glad?"
Yes. I said, I'm in the blue bubble. I said, "Are you glad you walked me out?" ?
And what did she respond?
Defendant said, yes, with like semicolon, some type of a mark there. Are you ? And I said, DEF for definitely.
And if I could direct your attention to the next page, 36.
So do you really like me? Yes. Boy, that's That's a crazy, overwhelming affirmative, isn't it? Yes. How about you? Do you really like me? Did you really like when I kissed you? How much leverage, how much control do I have over you? How much can I manipulate you? How much do you want me? How much can I tease out the idea that that I'm some kind of loose woman and I'd hop into bed with you at the first, right? at the first chance. Where are you? Where are you right now? Do you like me? And she keeps saying, I think you're hot. He's like, no. So now we're simpatico. We're alike. You're from my neighborhood. She pulled out all the stops here.
And if you could, please read from that.
So at the top, I'm in the blue bubbles. It says yes. And then I said, are you going home tonight or tomorrow a.m.? Defendant texted, we kissed, comma, right? Question mark. So then I put a question mark on her question and said, is this a trick question? Defendant said, I don't know when I'm going home. I'm selling my house, with what I think is a smiley face. What a trick question.
Right. So she's about to say, come over to the house that I have away from John O'Keefe. And he sounds like he might be down for it. He's like, I've had a few drinks. Maybe, his better thinking his guard might be down a little bit. And she's like, we kissed, right? Isn't that enough? Or I can't figure out what she's doing there. It seems like she's also making a trail of incriminating trail so she can use it for revenge when she needs to and have control over him and show it to the people that she needs to show it to as proof. And he's suspicious of it. Is this a trick question? And she's like, forget when I said I was going to throw myself at you tonight. I don't know when I'm going home. And that house, I'm trying to sell it, so don't expect any afternoon trysts in that house. What are you talking about? What trick question? I mean, gaslighting central. And now he's back. Are you moving to Canton? I am following your lead with this. He's saying, you tell me when and where, I'll be there. Boy, did he dodge a bullet with this. Boy, did he dodge a psychopath, but it still looks like it bothers him and traumatized him. Can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine that? All I'm thinking about is how awful it must have been for John O'Keefe and all the manipulation he endured. And the power struggles, and the gaslighting, and the fights for nothing. And he was trying to get away, and it's so sad, almost got away.
And a couple of question marks. I responded, are you moving to Canton? I'm following your lead with this. Defendant responded, I live here, but I have property in Emfield. I'm guessing it's Medfield. Defendant said, why my lead? I don't want any responsibility. I responded, you started this, right? Question mark. Why did you get my number? And it says, each out to me. It meant to say, reach out to me. I then said, still have not told me.
And sir, if I could direct your attention to the next page 37 and ask you to read from that.
Defendant said, sorry, should I not have?
Right. I don't want to answer that question. I don't want to tell you my intentions. That I don't want to show my hand. I don't want to tell you what I'm really doing. Now I'm going to try to make you feel guilty, like you're somehow rejecting me by just asking questions. What a piece of work this woman is. Amazing.
I responded, I'm fine with it. Just don't know why you can't answer. Defendant said, you're mad at me? I said,
Right. See, it's just like if you have a problem, it's your anger that's the problem. Why are you mad at little old me, who's just totally manipulating, gaslighting, trying to use you as revenge for my boyfriend? How dare you be savvy to my games?
OMG, no, not at all. You're being silly. Defendant said, I told you, exclamation point. I just think you like me and I'm attracted to you. And then she said, a lot. I responded, feeling is mutual. I just never saw this coming. Defendant said, why? Question mark. I responded, because I just assumed you were happy with your situation. Defendant responded, I was, but things have deteriorated.
I was, but unfortunately, John O'Keefe has figured out how toxic and psychopathic I am.
Direct your attention to the next page 38 and ask you to read from that, sir.
I said, why? Question mark. How so? Question mark. What did Melissa say when you asked for my number? Question mark. Defendant responded, it is very, very complicated. He and I dated when we were kids, and then his sister died and everything got fucked up. I responded, he seems very into you. Defendant responded, I just told Melissa that I had your number but lost it. I said, that's cute. She wasn't suspicious? Question mark. Defendant responded, no, she's great. I responded, does she know you like me? Question mark. Defendant responded, she's a sweetie. We just agreed you are great, with another smile.
Right. See, she's great because I can manipulate her totally. She's not suspicious. She has no idea how dark and disturbed and dangerous and deranged I am. A real sweetheart. Just the way I like him. Naive and easy to manipulate.
Smiley type face.
And sir, if I could direct your attention to page 40 and ask you to read from that.
Defendant said, yeah, but where is that? I have had all my shit here for a couple of years and my house has been vacant, but I'd like to get closer to the water. I responded, are you breaking up or staying together? Defendant responded, I don't know. He hooked up with another girl on vacation. I'm very close to his niece.
I'm very close to his niece, although the minute after I took his life, all I could say is I can't take care of these kids and never talk to them again. I'm very close up to the moment when it's no longer a source of narcissistic supply for me. And I think that it was that's my take, is that I think she thought that getting with John O'Keefe, she'd get a lot of narcissistic supply. People would admire her for taking care of the kids. And the actual reality of taking care of the kids was not worth the small bit of narcissistic supply that she got. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. And Karen Reed can't be close to anyone. She doesn't have any empathy or real feelings, compassion. She's a psychopath. She's incapable of getting close to anyone. And we know that John O'Keefe didn't cheat on her. But of course, she always has to paint herself as the victim when she's actually the victimizer very very typical thing that victimizers do.
Very fucked up situation. I responded, when was that and how did you find out he hooked up? Question mark. I don't want to complicate your situation. Defendant responded, we went away for New Year's, the four of us. I put the kids to bed and found him in the lobby of our hotel all over one of our friends. Whatever, it doesn't matter. I responded, it does matter.
Now, as far as that indication that she made to you, is it through text communications or in person? Did she indicate at any point in time where that occurred?
So there was an occasion that the defendant stopped at my house. And again, the conversation that took place at my house was in relation to, again, sussing out and trying to figure out if this was what everything that I stated before. Like, was this legitimate? Was she seriously interested in me? Was she at the end of her relationship with John? And during that, there was touch on that topic, and I became to realize, it was my understanding at that point that this incident took place in Aruba on New Year's Eve, based off the text messages and the conversation at my residence.
This was something that she brought up, not only in the text communications with you, but in person and communication with you as well.
Yes, I mean, outside of being over there for the game, there was only one time that the defendant and I ever interacted on a one-on-one basis.
If I could direct your attention to the next page, 41, and ask you to read from that.
So I'm in the blue bubbles, and I said, did they bang? Question mark. The defendant responded, does that matter? Question mark. I said, sorry, I was just asking. I was just trying to figure shit out. Defendant responded, it doesn't really matter. I said, okay, I won't ask again. Defendant said, I don't.
Right. He's trying to figure out, boy, is he on to her. It doesn't matter. Does my phony story matter at all? They hugged because they hadn't seen each other in a while. And then I immediately told her, F you. She returned my line, and that was the end of it. But of course, now somehow I'm the victim. And he's like, yeah, he's like, what did they, because he probably can't imagine John O'Keefe doing this. So it does matter to him. And every time he calls her the defendant with his glasses in his hand, it's just like, chef's kiss.
Care with a smiley face. It doesn't matter. I responded back, okay, hear you loud and clear, Karen. Defendant responded, okay. I responded, why are you getting your thing all twisted up over simple questions? And then I typed thong. Defendant responded, I'm not. I am, question mark. I responded, you're kind of getting defensive. Defendant responded, not at all, with an exclamation point.
More gaslighting. He's like, you're kind of getting defensive here. I'm just trying to really suss out what your intentions are, what happened, why your relationship that you seem so happy with is breaking down. And you seem to be giving me answers that are opaque, to say the least. Jane's World says, like I say, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, no game, either one of them. I'm embarrassed for both of them. And it looks like Higgins, it's not only just embarrassed, it looks like his stomach is turning reading this stuff. He's just disgusted that he ever even considered her as a potential dating partner. That's what I see. He calls her the defendant. And she almost looks, at first I thought I saw a little bit of shame that that this is all being aired out, but now I just see she just looks bored. Yeah, I tried to manipulate him. It didn't work out too well. Didn't really go anywhere. Are we really going to spend this much time on these? What a master manipulator she is. Dangerous woman. Please, jury, remove her from society. so she doesn't hurt anyone else.
Thank you, sir. If I could direct your attention to page 46. Ask you to read from that.
Defendant is in gray. She said, "We did kiss earlier, comma, no," with an exclamation point. I responded in blue bubble, "I think you initiated that, no, question mark." Defendant said, "Yep. Do I owe you an apology?" Question.
Right. She just wants to make sure she has it down for later, for any kind of blackmail purposes, manipulation purposes. Again, do I owe you an apology? What about anything he said would she's playing victim? Oh, did I do something wrong? Did I offend you with my kiss and throwing myself at you?
Question mark. I said, "OMG, no. Why are you being sensitive?" Defendant responded, "I'm not." I responded, "Kinda." There's a P and a FFT, never, responded by the defendant. "What do you want from me?" Question mark. I responded, "What's on the table?" Question mark. Defendant said, "What do you want ideally?" Question mark. I responded, "The real deal." Defendant responded, "It doesn't exist."
Wow. Not with me. You don't get the real deal with me. I'm not kidding. Well, you get just manipulation, mind games, and misery. That's what I offer. But lots of sex, that's on the table. Doesn't that sound delightful? And I love when he says to her, why are you being so sensitive? Why are you making yourself the victim? And she says, "What do you want from me?" And he says, "What are you offering me?" And then she won't answer that again. What do you want? What can I dangle like a carrot in front of you? The real deal. Oh, no, can't do that. I can't even fake that.
Thank you, sir.
There, look at Paul O'Keefe. He looking side-eyeing Karen Reed. He just looks disgusted. That's the real Karen Reed. They all loved her. They all I mean, I don't know if love is the word they use, but they all really liked her. They all thought she was someone she wasn't. She did a really good imitation of a real human being, non-psychopathic human being. And that's the real Karen Reed right there in those text messages.
I can direct your attention to page 57, sir. And ask you to read from that.
It starts off in blue. I said, "I can go to any base, but usually Hanscom and Bedford are down to the Cape." Defendant responded, "Which base down the Cape? Which branch?" I said, Army. Defendant said, "I'm not abnormally sensitive." I responded, "Joint base Cape Cod. Oh, I won't be so hard on you." Defendant responded, "OMG."
So I used that for the thumbnail. I'm not abnormally sensitive. That was my quote. I just thought that was so ironic. I'm tough as nails. I'm completely devoid of any sensitivity, any compassion, any feeling. I think this is a good place to end it. I think you get the idea. It goes back and forth and back and forth. And we can't deal with his cross, hopefully tomorrow coming up. But I thought that this was particularly interesting. It's not too often that you see Karen Reed really called out like that, or any woman in any defendant in any case called out. Usually they're master manipulators. They're masters at fooling people. Jill Downey says, thanks, Roberta. Jumping ahead, do you think Jackson scored any points today? I really don't. I have to go back and rewatch it. And I know that Kate and Kevin, Kate of Masshole, Troll Mafia, felt that he may have scored a few points, but ultimately it was a nothing burger, meaning he may have won a battle or two, but ultimately lost the war. Kevin was thought that maybe he did some damage. I think that Alan Jackson is, if this is a fair trial and this is a rational, open-minded jury, or, you know, not a jury that's been infected by this campaign, that what I would assume is that Alan Jackson has already lost the jury's trust. You can't just go scorched earth on every single witness and decide not to cross-examine a few. I mean, they all can't be the lying devils. I know the Karen Reed campaign is certain of it, that every single witness is lying and covering something up and is terror. I don't see it. I see these witnesses as excellent. Their memories are excellent. Generally, much better than my memory would be. And I think they've come across as honest. If they misremember something, I don't get the feeling it's because they're lying. It's just because that's the way memory is. To quote Elizabeth Loftus, the memory expert, check out my episode about Elizabeth Loftus's. I watched her testify she was one of two witnesses who testified for Ghislaine Maxwell's defense. That'll give you an idea of the kind of expert and kind of human being she is. And also Harvey Weinstein. Her famous quote is, "Memory is not like a tape recorder," which is so amusing, as Ross Chait, who wrote a great book called The Witch Hunt Narrative, points out that no one says that memory is like a tape recorder. No one says, oh, just play back your memory like a tape recorder. We all recognize that memory is fallible, that we can misremember things. But she's made a career out of basically convincing the whole academic community that you can't believe anything that you see, hear, don't believe your lying eyes or your lying ears ever. And it's especially hilarious in the Tim Hennis case, where she called the two eyewitnesses the worst eyewitnesses she's ever seen. And you can look at the police sketch in that, and it's exact to Tim Hennis, who was eventually convicted by DNA and was tried militarily after he was acquitted in his second trial, thanks to Elizabeth Loftus's testimony about how you can't believe the eyewitnesses. So that's an interesting case. I would love to revisit that sometime. So that's what I have for today. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Please hit the thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Share this episode. Subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave me a 5-star review. And I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.